Spotlight is proudly sponsored by HEC Media, St. Louis's home for arts, education, and culture.
Michelangelo just did it. He didn't talk about it, he didn't draw it, he just did it.
The Diverse Business Accelerator really equipped me with the necessary tools to perfect my plan.
It's something that we should really be proud of as part of our history.
Today on Spotlight, a local program helping women and minorities grow their small businesses. Plus, an inside look at the summer group show at Houska Gallery. And then the latest research from Missouri laboratories on the highly contagious Delta variant. But first, the untold story of Michelangelo's final decades. It's Sunday and you're watching the Emmy Award-winning Spotlight.
Think of Rome, and you might think of the Vatican. Think of the Vatican, and you might think of the Sistine Chapel. Think of the Sistine Chapel, and you probably think of Michelangelo. But he was far more than a painter. Michelangelo, the greatest artist of the Renaissance, was truly a Renaissance man. A sculptor, a poet, and in his final years, primarily an architect.
Part of the transformation of the Rome we know today is because of Michelangelo's architectural projects in the late 70s and 80s of his life.
And his biggest project of all was at the Vatican. But it wasn't the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. It was St. Peter's Basilica.
At 70, he's, deserves to retire. And the Pope comes and says, you're taking over St. Peter's, the largest, most complicated architectural project in the world. Michelangelo just can't believe it. He's 70 years old. He has no business taking over such a project. But you do not say no to a pope.
And William Wallace just can't seem to say no to Michelangelo. Dr. Wallace is a professor of art history at Washington University and an internationally recognized authority on Michelangelo, whose seventh book about the artist, called Michelangelo, God's Architect, tells the story of the artist's final years and greatest masterpiece.
If you ask who's the greatest engineer of the Renaissance, everybody would say Leonardo da Vinci. We have 6,000 pages of Leonardo's drawings and all kinds of brilliant engineering ideas. But Leonardo didn't actually carry out any of those engineering ideas. Michelangelo just did it. He didn't talk about it, he didn't draw it, he just did it. And he accomplished enormously complicated and impressive engineering feats all through his life. So he had an engineering skill and knowledge that was of a depth beyond anybody else of his time. And it started with the fact that he was a sculptor. He was bringing marble blocks from the Carrara quarries 90 miles from Carrara to Florence. And these were blocks that are 8 tons, larger than anything that had been moved since Roman times 1,000 years before. So he had to rethink how the Romans had done this and how they had transported these materials, how they lifted 8 tons and moved them 90 miles. So that was the beginning of his engineering knowledge, which helps, of course, in building a building.
Well, you talk about, too, using the donkeys to haul these things and this kind of system that he arranged around with ramps and so forth to get the donkeys to haul that up there.
This was a brilliant innovation in St. Peter's. We don't actually know, unless you climb the dome in St. Peter's, because you climb the dome and come down one of these helical ramps. There are 4 of them in the corners of the dome. And these are enclosed ramps, circular helical ramps that go up. And these were designed by Michelangelo so that he could carry the materials, the building materials, sand, bricks, water, and the stone, up 200 or 250 feet. And the donkeys were carrying these up these ramps. And of course, if the donkeys knew they were 250 feet up in the air, they would have frozen and they wouldn't have moved. But inside these helical ramps, they were very comfortable and they were very easy to carry these heavy, heavy weights up. So this is one of these brilliant innovations that Michelangelo came up with.
Well, and of all the parts of St. Peter's that people would picture, I think, when they first picture St. Peter's in their mind, at least, is the dome.
The sad thing is, of course, Paul, is that Michelangelo never saw that dome completed. Some people complain, well, Michelangelo would have changed his mind and the dome isn't exactly what we expect. Yes, he probably did change. He changed his mind every single day. Every single day he went on the architectural site, he changed his mind. But the dome is the dome that he basically designed, and he would have been perfectly, I think, content to see it rise all the way to what we have today.
Michelangelo knew he would never live long enough to see St. Peter's completed. But despite new problems and old age, he persevered, because Michelangelo was never building St. Peter's for himself.
Well, as he said, he ended up working for God. At the end, it was no longer working for his friends or his family. The person he was working for was God.
Scan the QR code on your screen with your phone's camera to watch the full interview and find out why the St. Louis Arch has a unique similarity to St. Peter's Basilica. You can also head to hecmedia.org. Scan the QR code on your screen to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram.
Meet Tiffany, owner of Pure Vibes and a recent graduate of the Diverse Business Accelerator.
The Diverse Business Accelerator program is an accelerated business growth program for small businesses owned by minorities and women that have an average annual revenue of $500,000. We created a program that allows us to work with businesses as they increase their capacity to take on larger contracts.
As for Pure Vibes,
they were already thebomb.com, so let's just say that first. But beyond that, Tiffany brought to the program a willingness to learn, which we call coachability. So everything that we shared with Tiffany about building her brand, supporting her efforts to expand the business, she walked away and did it if she wasn't already in the process of doing so before we even recommended it for her. So basically, we helped Tiffany to really build out her brand as she was pivoting her business during COVID, because she pivoted. She went from being just a manufacturing and retail business to also being a worker-owned co-op.
A worker-owned cooperative is a company that is owned and operated by its workers. So it's a little bit different in terms of traditional business. There's a guy at the top who has investors and stakeholders. But our stakeholders are our workers because they have a direct pathship to ownership and equity. So not only do they work for a company, but they own the company as well.
the Diverse Business Accelerator specifically works with women and minorities for a very good reason.
Women and minorities are often the most disadvantaged business owners in any region. They usually lack the networks, the tools, and often the time to just work on their businesses. They are working on businesses that are passion projects often. They're working on businesses that they have developed to meet their personal needs, and by virtue of meeting their personal needs, they started to be able to meet others' needs. Then they just start to grow. So they come into the program and we work with them on really building that out into a business instead of a side hustle or just a niche thing to do.
I think we were off to a great start in terms of growing our business, but I would say the Diverse Business Accelerator really equipped me with the necessary tools to perfect my plan, especially in regards to like all of the accounting and the legal resources they provided. It also provided me a moment to step back and work on my business versus in it, like manufacturing. So I think it was very imperative that I had a bird's eye view, right? And looked at the business holistically and see what I could do and change my strategy to grow.
Pure Vibes was born in 2013 out of personal necessity.
One visit to the doctor kind of changed my life. He was like, you should start exploring vegan and gluten-free options. So that started me to self-audit my entire lifestyle, right? The things I was eating, and not only that, but the products I was using. So I started to search for natural, organic, and gluten-free products.
Yet, she only found minimal products available on the market. So, being the entrepreneur that she is, she decided to create her own.
I am, I guess, a life learner. It was one of those things, I'm always looking to learn new things. So I just started researching every ingredient on every product label. What they say, 10,000 hours makes you an expert. So I just read a lot of books, got into a lot of products, studied aromatherapy, the healing essential oils, and everything just went and naturally flowed. our company is called Pure Vibes. So not only is it necessary to have like the right ingredients, but it's about how the product makes you feel. So we actually make and manufacture our products here in our studio. So all of our natural cold processed soaps, we blend all the oils, the essential oils, add all of our natural ingredients, such as turmeric and additives, and we just formulate them here.
Whether shopping retail or online, customers find Pure Vibes cost-effective.
People often think that natural products are fairly expensive, but when you think about actual natural products in the industry, we're fairly priced. And considering that we use all natural organic products and essential oils, we find that we are very competitive in terms of the products in the market.
Tiffany is off to a great start and has lofty goals in mind.
My goal is to be 100% worker-owned and operated within 5 years. And then the huge goal is to be in Target, Walgreens, and CVS, and not to mention Ulta Beauty.
HEC celebrates St. Louis like no other media outlet, highlighting those making a difference through science and technology.
It's a wonderful community of young entrepreneurs who are all doing very amazing things.
Focusing on arts and education.
Poverty is not going to stop a student from getting a quality education. We can't let that happen.
Broadcasting meetings and functions to educate and inform our community.
St. Louis feels like a city on the road to extraordinary things.
Producing compelling documentaries celebrating our region.
Henry Shaw founded the Missouri Botanical Garden, one of the first of its kind in the country and one of the best of its kind in the world.
Visit hecmedia.org for up-to-date, locally produced stories about the people and organizations who make St. Louis great.
We are here at Houska Gallery, and we are showing our annual summer group show, which features work from 15 of our different local artists. In our show, we focus on how color has influenced the community around us today. So when someone comes into the show, the first thing they're going to notice is the vibrancy of all the colors showed. With a lot of different mediums, styles, and techniques, we definitely keep the eye moving along. So with mediums like paper mosaic, ceramic, cardboard sculpture, traditional paintings, and prints, there's a lot to experience when visiting the gallery. With color being an expression of emotion, we really got a chance to show how our artists have developed over the past year. We want people to leave with the understanding that people have very powerful emotions and they can stand out in many different ways. You've seen that through the mediums that we put together and the colors that we flow throughout the gallery. But overall, we just want people to know that the art world is still very much here, and for those who have not been to a gallery in a while, we want them to remember what we're all about. When it came to hanging the show, putting all the colors that matched together was really quite organic. There's this common theme that we found throughout, this past year, looking at the different artists that we've chosen. When it all came together, it was quite easy for us, and we really just went with the flow of things. And the combination of all this work really resulted in a colorful experience. In addition to everything else we've seen, Tim Hahn, our featured summer artist, is located on our lower level. His work is about the relationship between color, form, and material. This is obvious because his paintings are multidimensional and function more as objects. He's aiming for a purely aesthetic experience and leaves the interpretation open to the viewer. And so his work fits in really well with all of the other art we are showing, because we both have work that sticks out at you and you can immediately tell what the meaning behind it is, while some of the work does take a longer time and a lot of attention to really figure out the true meaning behind it. It has been a lot of fun working with these artists over the past month. The summer is always a great time to bring everyone together, and we hope that you all get a chance to see the exhibit in person. Our show will be running from July 16th to August 28th, and you can find more information on our website at houskagallery.com.
What history teaches us about the pandemic later on Spotlight. During the pandemic winter months, virologist and immunologist Dr. Michael Diamond and his colleagues conducted laboratory-based experiments to understand variants of COVID-19. The researchers found that the variants can evade antibodies that work against the original form of the virus that causes COVID-19. They determined variants potentially undermine the effectiveness of COVID-19 vaccines and found that more antibody is needed to neutralize the new variants.
We had serum from humans that were vaccinated and then tested it against the variant viruses.
Now, the professor of microbiology and of pathology and immunology at Washington University School of Medicine in St. Louis has continued to advance the research in his lab, testing vaccines against the variants, focusing on the highly contagious Delta variant.
This is a much more highly transmissible virus than the original virus, and so basically people who are not vaccinated now are at higher risk for getting Delta virus infection. When new variants emerge, we then acquire them, evaluate them, and then test them in that process, both in cell culture-based systems, but then also in vivo in the context of how vaccines perform and how antibodies perform.
As mutations are identified, intense study by Diamond and his colleagues testing vaccines against the variants in animal models will help the larger scientific community determine the best approach for vaccines moving forward.
As we get more and more variants, as they change and accumulate these mutations, there's concern that we're going to have to make some substitutions at some point, either by boosting with vaccines that are different or boosting with vaccines that are the same.
The science in Dr. Diamond's lab is part of a large-scale effort to make decisions about vaccinations and vaccine booster shots.
We have programs with the NIH, a large collaboration, my group, many other groups, to, as a network, test all of the approved vaccines or close to approved vaccines against historical vaccines as well as variant-based vaccines that the manufacturers are generating. So collectively doing that with all of the variant viruses, the key variants, for example, Delta, Delta Plus, Beta, others that are emerging that we have information on, which are beginning to percolate through based on deep sequencing effort. So that's all being done. It's being done collectively. My laboratory is one of the laboratories doing it, but there are many others.
The University of Missouri School of Medicine is launching new research focused on the Delta variant and the immune response in patients who are infected.
We want to know how long their immunity lasts. Are they protected against other variants? And so comparing how different is the response to this virus versus the other viruses.
Associate Professor of Surgery and Molecular Microbiology and Immunology, Dr. Mark Daniels, is the principal investigator. Daniels is starting with the enrollment of at least 100 participants infected by the Delta variant and any new variant they may identify.
We're working with a number of labs across Missouri to give us patient samples that then we can do sequencing and determine whether or not they've been infected with the variant, and then we'll reach out and contact those individuals to try to recruit them.
First, Daniels wants to see how the immune response differs between demographics.
We're going to get unvaccinated individuals. We will get breakthrough individuals. We'll get the demographic information, their health information, and public health information to determine why did they end up infected now versus later, and a number of other questions that we're interested in.
The research will monitor their immune response and test their antibodies against other variants.
Reagents that we get, the antibodies in their blood, and we can test them against a number of variants. Now, there are other variants that are out there, and we will determine those as we do our sequencing, and we can follow that.
This new study has some similarities to another study Daniels is leading as principal investigator. The research is on the efficacy and longevity of COVID-19 vaccines. The study has an enrollment of about 600 people who are vaccinated or partially vaccinated.
Are there differences in the vaccine? Are there differences into how well you're protected given the distance from the time that you were vaccinated? We're getting now a few patients that have breakthrough infections.
Daniels is closely following the immune response in study participants for a period of 1 year.
The research team is analyzing the presence of antibodies in their blood with repeat blood samples to see how the immune response changes over time. He wants to see how long protection lasts and how vaccination immunity differs from the immunity from natural infection. He also wants to see how vaccine effectiveness and immune responses differ between demographics, such as gender, age, socioeconomic factors, pre-existing conditions, and health issues.
We see a huge variability from patient to patient. And one of the things that's difficult, especially given what we know about the virus and know about the people, is there's not a magic number that anybody's determined that if your immune response in the measurable parameters equals some number, that means you're protected. And that's something that we're trying to determine.
Daniel says this study and the newer one about the Delta variant share a common goal.
To contribute to this effort to find out, what do we really need to do? Do we need to have a booster? Do we need to design a more diverse vaccine or a better vaccine?
You can find the full stories on both of Dr. Daniel's ongoing studies on our website, hecmedia.org.
HEC has been bringing you positive programming and award-winning content for decades. Arts, education, culture, in-depth discussions, films, and more. All in one place, hecmedia.org.
Hi, I'm Kevin Desplanks. I make sculptural furniture out of wood and bronze. The technique I use is called stack lamination, and stack lamination has a lot of possibilities as long as you know how the whole process works. I started off by gluing up a rough shape of a piece of furniture that I'm looking to create. After gluing it all together, I use various abrasive tools to grind the shapes into each piece. So my furniture is more sculpture than it is woodworking because I use the reductive process to remove what I don't want to be a piece of my artwork. It's very labor intensive, but I get a very unique shape and a very unique look. No two pieces are ever exactly alike, and I strive to make all of my work totally different from the next. Most people, when they sit in my chairs, what really strikes them is how comfortable they are. By sculpting every element of each piece of furniture, I can get the ergonomics exactly right. I also, at times, will custom fit a chair for a client where they can come over to my place and actually sit in the chair as I'm sculpting it to get their form fit perfectly, just like a big orthotic. What most people really appreciate about my work is the fact that it is functional art. It is a functional sculpture that they can not only sit back and look at it, but also sitting at it is a real treat as well because my furniture is so very comfortable. I'm really looking forward to doing this show in September, and I just hope everybody gets a chance to come by and see my unique artwork and also take a seat and sit in the most comfortable rocking chairs on planet Earth.
Scan the QR code on your screen to meet more artists that will be at this year's St. Louis Art Fair, September 10th through the 12th. You can find the stories featured in today's show along with past episodes and more at hecmedia.org/spotlight.
Hospitals full. Disease spreads. More shutdowns ordered. These are headlines in St. Louis about the deadly pandemic of 1918. Nearly 100 years ago, St. Louis and the rest of the nation were in the grip of the Spanish flu. St. Louis historian Nini Harris has researched extensively how the Spanish flu impacted the gateway city. Spanish flu spread quickly around the world as military troops shipped home from World War I.
Within a few days, you'd have a healthy person literally drowning in their own lungs because their lungs filled up with fluid. And ultimately, they were suffocating within a few days because they couldn't breathe.
Death from the so-called grip ravaged East Coast towns like Philadelphia, but total death counts here in St. Louis were markedly lower.
As any good public health student learns in their sort of epidemiology 101, the difference between what happened in St. Louis and what happened in the city of Philadelphia during the Spanish flu or the 1918 flu. And so that story, of course, is that once St. Louis recognized that influenza was present in the city, they shut the entire city down, they canceled a parade, whereas Philadelphia said, no, we're not going to cancel anything, and went full forward. And then you just look at the mortality spikes between Philadelphia and St. Louis, and there's a dramatic difference between the two.
In Philadelphia, it became so bad so quickly. As many as 11,000 people died in 1 week. In St. Louis, those 3 deadliest months, we had 2,018 people die of the influenza.
And what made the difference? Many credit Max Starkloff, St. Louis's health commissioner in 1918.
Both Max and his father become very prominent physicians in St. Louis, but they carry on medicine like warriors go out on a mission. They are relentless when it comes to public health. Word doesn't travel like it does now. And he has, thank goodness, read lots of newspapers from the cities that are being so terribly afflicted. So he is making plans.
How did he do it? Some techniques that might sound familiar.
Not nearly as advanced as the mask we have now, but nonetheless provided some level of protection, particularly if everybody wore one.
In November, right before Armistice Day, there was an even stricter ban on gatherings. Anything that wasn't critical was shut down for a short term, 4 days.
What is politically and socially volatile now was controversial then, too.
People objected, businesses objected. The mayor was, oh my God, I've got to get reelected. How am I going to deal with this? There was a lot of complaint, but ultimately, he, as much through his force of personality and his ability to communicate how serious a threat this was, made it clear that, yeah, that you're going to lose money shutting down. This is going to be a great burden. But the alternative is going to be so many deaths.
The proverb is that we should learn the lessons of history so that history does not repeat itself. So did we learn anything from the pandemic of 1918?
The city of St. Louis in 1918, again, experienced what we're calling COVID fatigue now. And it was fatigue for the restrictions that were in place with influenza. And so the city of St. Louis began relaxing a lot of the restrictions of social distancing, things like that. And as a result, there was a wave that occurred in the spring of 1919.
And what should future generations learn from this pandemic?
Trust in the science that happened in St. Louis back in 1918. I think by and large it happened in St. Louis today. The medical profession, the public health profession, they're there for a reason. They want to combat the pandemic. They want to find a cure. St. Louis is a well-known story within pandemics, and it's something that we should really be proud of as part of our history.
Next week, we'll take you to Missouri's first food truck garden. Plus, what today's kids need for tomorrow's world. Thanks for watching Spotlight. Join us next Sunday at 9:30 a.m. on KPLR 11.